Hello everyone and welcome to the Motivation and Emotion textbook chapter titled Motivation and Promiscuity. This recording will give you a brief outline of what you can expect from this particular textbook chapter. So this is an outline of the chapter content, and the points in white are the main topics focused on within the body of the chapter, and the words in black focus on extra learning aspects incorporated into the chapter to help you fully understand the concepts covered. And as you can see, it includes a general introduction to promiscuity, and then focuses on 4 different aspects of this particular topic, being physiology of sexual motivation, attachment theory, gender differences, and the influence of personality on promiscuity. The introduction covers the definition of promiscuity, which is essentially sexual behavior with multiple partners across a person's lifetime, and this occurs without relationship exclusivity or monogamy. This section also highlights the concept of promiscuity as a form of risky sexual behavior, and that it is associated with increased risk of sexually transmitted infections and unwanted pregnancy, as well as interpersonal and psychological issues as well. And the purpose of the chapter is to explore the motivation behind promiscuity. So what mechanisms are involved in the choice to become promiscuous, if in fact there is any choice involved at all. And I invite you to critically evaluate the theories and research that are presented to you within the chapter, so that you can make up your own mind about whether you think they are plausible explanations of promiscuous behavior. And following the introduction is a brief exploration of the physiology of sexual motivation. And when I first started researching for this topic, I was of the impression that biology would have a lot to do with promiscuity. However, during my review of the literature, it became apparent that this physiology seemed to be an explanation of sexual motivation in general, but not so much promiscuity. However, it is my opinion that sexual desire is ultimately an underlying component of sex, and thus to some extent of sexual promiscuity, and thus I included physiology into this chapter. And the main focus was on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, as well as Hull's drive reduction theory. And the conclusion that I came to within the chapter is that physiological aspects drive sexual behavior generally, and that perhaps these combine with other influences to produce promiscuous behavior. And the next section looks at attachment theory, which is based on the premise that childhood relationships with parental figures determine the types of relationships that a person will have in later life. Now, in relation to promiscuity, this theory suggests that a poor attachment to the parent in early life will carry over to poor relationships in adulthood, which could result in a search for short-term mating to satisfy sexual needs without that meaningful relationship component attached to it. And this theory also suggests that sexual activity with multiple partners may be an overcompensation for the lack of connection that they received as a child. And this is followed by a section focusing on gender differences in promiscuous behavior. And essentially this section states that men tend to be more promiscuous than women, and this idea is explored through the sexual strategies theory. The focus is therefore on the tendency for men to desire short-term mating with multiple partners more so than women, and also on the idea that men consent to sex more quickly than women. And research conducted by Buss and Schmidt is presented within this part of the chapter, and this research supports the sexual strategies theory. This section also focuses on gender bias, and I put forth the suggestion that social expectations are in part responsible for sexual promiscuity. And the final section of the chapter focuses on personality, which seems to be a very important and well-researched form of motivation for promiscuity. And so in this section I touch on Isaac's Penn model of sexual behavior, and then look at a study conducted on personal temperament and promiscuity, which suggests that people with particularly warm or cold personality types are more likely to become promiscuous. And there is also a focus on the 5-factor model in relation to promiscuity, and the research on this model has found that high levels of extroversion and also low levels of conscientiousness and agreeableness tend to be associated with promiscuous behavior. And finally, the chapter includes some extra learning tools to help you get your head around the content within the chapter. So a summary is offered to highlight the key points that I have been making throughout the chapter, and then a short quiz has been created as well as a form of self-revision, so you can get an idea of your extent of understanding for the topic. And I've also included a list of key terms and a reference list as well, so that you can check up on other aspects if you wish to expand your knowledge. And I've also added some links to other chapters within this particular textbook as well. Overall, I've enjoyed writing this textbook chapter, and I hope you enjoy reading it as much as I've enjoyed looking up the information on it. Thank you.